Saturday, May 14th, 1988, Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's Atlantic Records' 40th anniversary show, a star-studded celebration featuring icons like Genesis, a solo Robert Plant, and a controversial second Led Zeppelin reunion. But as English prog legends, Yes, take the stage, no one knows this will be their final performance of the decade. Months away from their 20th anniversary, Yes had enjoyed a strong run in the 80s. 3 studio albums, 2 major lineups, and 277 concerts. But behind the scenes, tension simmered as they closed their set with Roundabout, a song that marked Jon Anderson's departure back in 1979. History was about to repeat itself. The band was about to unravel, and that night would mark the end of an era for 80s Yes, an unspoken tragedy on a night meant for celebration. How did they get there? What happened? Let's rewind the tape and go back in time. Welcome to the final chapter of my 90125 and Big Generator series, a play-by-play breakdown of the pivotal moments, sights, and sounds that led to the collapse of one of the greatest teams in rock history. Join me as we uncover the dramatic events that ended an era for Yes, the band that pushed boundaries and captivated the world and beyond. Oh yes, and contrary to countless online forums, I don't think it was Trevor Rabin's fault. Coinciding with Yes's album release, Guitar World magazine ran a September cover story on Chris Squire and Trevor Rabin. The magazine also featured an article on Metallica being the new Led Zeppelin. We can see Trevor rocking a series of Westone Pantera guitars, both a 12-string electric on the cover, as well as a 6-string for both the photo shoot and a promo ad. Chris Squire's red bass was a custom 5-string instrument built by luthier Mike Tobias. This is the bass we hear on the song Big Generator. Tobias was also the man behind a Trevor Rabin guitar used in both the rehearsal and recording of the new album. Both Yes Men shared their music stories with vibrant colors and string theories. The article talked about Rabin's solo career, and Squire explained how Trevor arrived at the world of Yes, which in itself feels a bit late for 1987. This would have made sense in 1984, when Owner of an Lonely Heart was everywhere, and everybody wanted to know who Trevor was. Rabin talked about using the guitar as orchestra in favor of the songs, while cutting back on the soloing. He also shared his deep knowledge of music technology and his never-ending quest for the latest stuff. The article doesn't really push Big Generator that much, but at least got their name in the musician's press. Now reading the whole thing makes you wonder what the angle for the story really was. The label sent out promotional materials for the album and hoped for the best, despite a very competitive record-buying market, which I discussed on Big Generator's episode 2. The Yes Fan Convention of 1987 took place in July, but still, there was uncertainty as to how big was the actual demand for Yes's concerts almost 4 years after 90125. Advertisements ran on various publications letting fans know about Big Generator, plus an upcoming 2-leg, 74-date North American tour, with opening night scheduled for October 20th at Illinois' Peoria Civic Center. So how busy was the North American touring market September through December 1987? Brace yourselves. Roger Waters, Guns N' Roses, Fleetwood Mac, U2, Def Leppard, Aerosmith, Whitesnake, and Motley Crue, to name a few. Almost every artist here outsold Yes's Big Generator big time, but Yes did manage to sell more copies than Roger Waters' Radio Chaos. Now the main star of the touring circuit was of course Pink Floyd. Their 2-year Momentary Lapse of Reason tour began in September 1987. They were doing multiple nights at several venues, where Yes was only booked for a single show. These included 4 dates at Oakland's Alameda County Coliseum, Landover's Capitol Center, and Illinois' Rosemont Horizon. There were also 3 nights at both Richfield Coliseum and Madison Square Garden, plus a whopping 5-show series at Nassau's Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Pink Floyd stole everyone's thunder that year. Yes's 1987-1988 tour wasn't called Big Generate Tour, but the Big Tour, according to the official program that for some reason doesn't have any concert dates on it. Things got off on the wrong foot, with 19 out of 46 shows for 1987 either cancelled or reprogrammed. That's every show from October 20th through November 18th, with the exception of their actual opening night at Nebraska's Omaha Civic Auditorium on November 14th, almost a month behind schedule. An article released that same month stated the band had technical problems at rehearsals during the first week of the tour as a possible explanation for their troubled logistics. While this makes sense, I did my own research on concert venue stats, and I suspect there was more to it than gear malfunction. 10 out of these 19 shows I mentioned were reprogrammed for 1988. The 1987 spots were replaced in close calendar proximity with names like Guns N' Roses, Fleetwood Mac, and Pink Floyd selling multiple dates for venues like Dallas's Reunion Arena and North Carolina's Dean Smith Center, where once again Yes had only managed to book a single show. The other 9 concerts were destined for refunds. Total venue capacity for these 9 dates was 114,364 seats at an average price ticket of $16. That's around $1.8 million left on the table. November 1987 kept Yes's activity in the press with various headlines, despite Big Generator sinking low on the albums chart at number 94, in between Bon Jovi and LL Cool J. Nevertheless, Radio City Music reported on the band generating big sales. Tony Kaye tried to explain why they took so long to come back into the market, as well as discussing the making of 90125 with little to no discussion about Big Generator. The Los Angeles Times published a November 8th piece by the name of Rabin, He's a Real Yes Man, with a photograph of Trevor in the studio. Rabin discussed his feelings in opposition against apartheid in South Africa, as well as his refusal to ever play with Yes at Sun City, something Queen's members later regretted. Rabin also revealed the Jewish origin for his last name, Rabin as in Rabinowitz, and the anti-Semitism he suffered in his own country. While the article mentions Big Generator's release, much focus was given to the 90125 story. Again, why every journalist seemed to want to talk about their last album instead of their new release beats me. Finally, a November 20th piece by Gary Graff made some thought-provoking questions on the state of progressive rock becoming pop. Yes's Love Will Find a Way and Big Generator were used as examples, alongside Genesis' Invisible Touch. The article mentioned how hardcore progressive fans grew disenchanted with the new direction most of their favorite bands were taking. The Big Tour setlist followed a similar structure to the previous 90125 endeavors, yet the song pacing was different and not as cohesive as before. Add in the fact both their solo spot dynamics and outfits were similar to 1984, and this makes it something of a lost tour for Yes. Fans have a hard time remembering this tour at all. Yes, Chris Squire's hair was different, and Rabin opted for black leather jackets, but it feels there weren't many changes to the Enterprise during their long 3-year absence from North America. Now, the elephant in the room, and most obvious when looking at the concert footage, is the fact that despite their virtuoso musicianship intact, the band's chemistry showed visible signs of burnout. They don't seem to be having as much fun as before. Despite classics such as I've Seen All Good People and Roundabout getting the crowd fired up, you can sense a disconnect in time and space, where everyone is there but not truly present as a group. To make things worse, they decided to bring back a song that truly amplified the ambiguity of intent. One of Yes's most audacious tunes, Fragile's Heart of the Sunrise, returned for the first time since 1979 when they were promoting Tornado. While you enjoyed this tour de force composition on stage, it feels out of place and takes away precious momentum from the other tracks in the set. Fans loved it, of course, but it only fed the elephant in the room, that being 70s Yes material couldn't coexist with 80s Yes or Yes West. It wasn't a lack of technique, but the same challenge 80s Genesis had with their setlists. They could do an old number medley, but that was it. Bringing back the Peter Gabriel era works full-time was not really what new fans wanted, nor what the band was all about at the time. This was one of Trevor Rabin's most feared scenarios back in 1983. The inevitable fate of playing Yes's back catalog tracks while he aimed for the future. Quote from a November 17th article, Trevor said, "The reality of calling the band Yes and taking it out on the road really came to me when I realized it meant playing some of the old stuff. I was a little reluctant at first because I've always hated doing cover versions of other people's music. I listened to the old albums and learned the parts. There wasn't anything technically difficult about it, and the idea was not to try to emulate Steve, but take what he did back then and work it with my own style. Just think what if Yes wanted to play the 20-minute Close to the Edge suite. It just doesn't suit 80s Yes from a conceptual point of view. Again, it's not a lack of musicianship. Trevor Rabin could play anything. It's just the 70s vibes were not there." This would slowly fuel Jon Anderson's concerns for the future. Unlike 1984, where the old numbers worked wonders with the 90125 stuff, the big tour feels like two camps fighting within, while slowly coming to terms of all expression laid. Now, there was another major problem with the big tour. While they played all 8 cuts from the new album, Big Generator was a frightening revelation, as most of the new songs didn't really translate that well on stage. Call it technological limitations or an overly ambitious studio design, it was Yes's first album that wasn't easy to replicate live, and yeah, that's even counting Relayer, which they managed to perform like the record. And no, I'm not saying Big Generator is a better album, I just mean it from a concert point of view. The reason for Big Generator's live performance issues was simple. Unlike all the other records up to that point, a huge portion of the studio sessions focused on overdubs and mixing as opposed to full band run-throughs of the final versions. They finished recording basic rhythm tracks in February 1986, and they hadn't played a show since February 1985. Their live concert spark suffered. It seems as if Yes detached too much from the material by the time they actually had to go on the road and perform. Trevor Rabin was interviewed on the big tour and admitted the band's 5 opinionated members and their complex arrangements didn't speed things up. Quote, "I think the band is guilty of taking too long in the studio. That's one of the problems, having 5 different opinions." Opening number on all 1987 dates was Almost Like Love, in what remains a superior version to its studio counterpart, thanks to the crowd's energetic response and the rhythm section's low-end punch, a deadly combo. It worked as a heavy-handed overture to warm things up, plus including a brief instrumental snippet of Heart of the Sunrise, despite it being played later in the set. I guess they really like this song, right? The first 3 shows of the tour had Rhythm of Love as the second number to keep their momentum going, yet the bootleg recordings reveal this being quite a vocally demanding track to attempt so early in the set. Rhythm of Love was later placed after Hold On, or in some cases, after Trevor Rabin's acoustic guitar solo. Both choices didn't work, as Rhythm of Love has a concert opener feel to it. The song was taken off the set for 1987 on December 4th, yet they released it as a second promo single on the 7th. Quite a strange move. Finalize was finalized after just 4 shows, with them placing this right before Heart of the Sunrise of all songs. The more you hear this live, it just doesn't work without additional studio textures and such. The fact the intro sounded like another setlist number, and You and I, didn't help either. A similar fate was to be for I'm Running, where despite a very tight musical unit approach and a positive fan response, it was a complicated track to perform with its 2 polarizing moods within. Bass legend Chris Squire had trouble with the song's intro at their Louisville, Kentucky show on November 22nd, having to stop and start over. Now, it was a different story for the other 4 tracks from the new album, which remained regular set numbers throughout the tour. Big Generator managed to get the crowd on their feet with effective interplay of keyboard elements, heavy bass lines, rapid guitar fire, and vocal frenzy. Shoot High, Aim Low made great use of the venue's reverb and space, despite a limited sonic range compared to the album. Rumor has it the band allegedly used some pre-recorded vocals on the chorus. You kinda miss Trevor Rabin's acoustic guitar here to properly replicate the studio track feel, yet his electric guitar work brought down the house in full power ballad explosion as the song concludes. Holy Lamb worked as a sort of Anderson solo spot, and it effectively inspired the crowds with its powerful melody. Sure, it wasn't a full-blown synth and bass version from the album, but damn was Jon Anderson brilliant here. A good melody is a good melody, in any shape or form. Love Will Find a Way was quite an ambitious number to attempt on stage because of the intricate layers and arrangement. While the rhythm section is flawless, the vocal side of things is, well, different. You don't feel much unity from Trevor, Jon, and Chris. I guess it's just strange to hear Anderson so high up in the mix for this track, where the studio version was much more balanced. Fun fact, some early versions of this song on tour had Trevor Rabin on acoustic guitar instead. Yes's first leg of shows ended on December 20th at Pennsylvania's Stabler Arena. 27 concerts were played in both the United States and Canada, with an opening pre-recorded segment of Popeye's cartoon Sinbad the Sailor at the start of every show. Pink Floyd played multiple nights on 7 venues from this list, while Yes was only able to play consecutive shows at Philadelphia Spectrum and the Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey. They made a historic 18th visit to Madison Square Garden since 1974 on December 16th. Little did they know, this would be the same stage where the 80s Yes would play their final show some 4 months and 28 days later. This first portion of the tour saw them play for an estimated 377,895 seats for $6 million in gross ticket sales. So more album reviews for Big Generator came in. What did the critics say? Let's take a look.
But this crash of 1987 is not just an American experience. Around the world, stock markets fell faster than a skydiver without a parachute.
So the stock market crash of October 1987 was not the worst thing in the world for Yes. They had to read the critics' reviews. Let's take a look. October 15th, 1987, Brett Milano, Boston Globe. He praised Yes as a conventional band and one of the best at it. He said Big Generator wasn't a trailblazing album, but was still clever and enjoyable. Milano pointed out how Rabin was less interested in soloing and went for textures and such. Surprisingly though, he called Love Will Find a Way a letdown. Quote, "The band's commercial side gets out of hand. I strongly disagree, Mr. Milano." October 17th, 1987, Scott Robinson, Louisville Courier-Journal. This review set the record straight of Yes's maturity in terms of sound, and also shares the beef of Trevor Horn being, quote, dismissed halfway through the making of the album. Yikes. He praised Rabin for taking over production and mixing, close quote, taught Yes how to jam. Robinson also spoke well of the danceable elements on the record and went as far as saying Alan White does things with a snare drum that would give Phil Collins pause. October 23rd, 1987, Kevin Filipski, Buffalo News. Yes was the third band on the article, with the critic praising the band for a, quote, deliciously irresistible mix of power pop, hard rock, moody ballads, and traditional extended pieces. He said Rabin filled in the shoes of Steve Howe, which was simply not true, because like I said before, Trevor never auditioned for Yes, and Howe left after Drama. Kevin praised Love Will Find a Way as an arranger's masterpiece. Overall, he was impressed by Rabin's ability to use his guitar as means to an end in favor of the songs. He further adds Big Generator moves away from failures, like Tales from Topographic Oceans, because the pretentiousness is gone. Ouch, 70s Yes fans, but I think Rick Wakeman would agree. November 27th, 1987, Janet Wilkoff, Tampa Tribune. Janet didn't hold back on her thoughts. This is a nasty review. The title gives it away. Just Say No to New Yes album. Let me read the opening statement. Big Generator could probably power a 60-watt light bulb. In relative terms, the previous Yes album could light a whole city. Despite her praise for the complexity, she said Big Generator combined dated elements of the old Yes with fiery effects from 90125, yet the mixture doesn't gel. Janet said the songs were hammered, like clunky jewelry, instead of the finely crafted stones it could have been. Wilkoff rated Love Will Find a Way as a mediocre rock song. Final Eyes was rated as pastoral romp, with Anderson screeching vocals getting on her nerves. I'm Running was called a parody of Old Yes. She trashed the lyrics, including I Eat at Chez Nous, which now you guys know what that means. I strongly disagree with Janet on Holy Lamb. She called it a pretentious embarrassment. I guess she was in serious need of harmonic convergence in her life. Last review on our list for 1987 was released on December 18th, Anand Agneshwar, Biddington Press. Title suggests Yes cloned past hits. Now it's weird the critics said last year Yes re-emerged with 90125, since that would have been 1986. Anand states that some rock bands think their audience is dumb as to buy the same thing and criticize Yes of doing such thing. The critics said they could make guitars and keyboards sound like they've been put through a food processor on 90125. The review stated Big Generator wasn't bad, but unoriginal and condescending to people who thought Yes were innovators. Rabin was said to prove he can fill Steve House's shoes, rapping himself in Speed, quote, absolutely ruining songs like Rhythm of Love and Shoot High, Aim Low. The critic did praise Final Eyes, I'm Running, and Holy Lamb, but trashed its production values. Last part is interesting, warning Yes that if this record was a hit, they may do the same album for a third time and quote, people don't want to eat the same thing for dinner 3 days in a row.
I don't know anything about producing.
No, talk about me.
Yeah, sorry. Trevor. Hi, Larry. Trevor is wonderful.
God, I can't afford this.
$5 a time.
$5? American or Canadian?
American. Thanks.
Oh, it's only Canadian. Well, you'll have to pay up later.
And he's really wonderful. There is no such thing as an album that's made without a little bit of pain. That's part of making music, you see?
And paying.
Paying. But Trevor really pulled it out of the fire and did all the mixing at the end. No problem.
That's $10.
$10.
Yeah. We can just get real technical here for a second and talk about something like song structure. I mean, in early days of Yes, there was more, there were concept albums, and the song structure was a lot more intricate, and you seem to have pared down that whole idea. Instead of the instrumentalists, which I think really came through in the early stuff, is that
to survive in this business, we've got to be able to get on radio.
John's voice is very distinctive, and it's thanks. John's voice is very distinctive, so it's easy to change a lot of things because there's always that thread. It's much easier to make an album that fails, so you can't go downhill. You know? It's always harder to sustain and keep it up.
And that's why we're on the road. We still got to prove it. We still got to prove that we're a good band anyway. Whether we have Big Generator is selling a lot of records, but we still got to get up on stage and put the show together, because that's what a group is, you know.
So that was your first #1 hit, Owner of a Lonely Heart?
Yeah.
Took you a while, guys.
Yeah. Well, you know, patience. Maybe the next album will stretch our musical wings a little bit.
Now, what did the critics have to say about the band's live shows? Some praised the band's energy and ability to keep themselves relevant in the changing 80s market. Other critics were a bit bleaker, using their typewriters to provide a different side to the story. The Montreal Gazette released a December 9th piece stating Yes was upstaged by their Popeye cartoon on the show's intro. They said Yes hadn't been quite as successful as Genesis, but the formula is the same. A lot of jabs in here, from compulsory solos, self-indulgence, dated vocals. Quote, Anderson's song introductions make Shirley MacLaine sound down to earth. Rochester's Chronicle, December 14th, said some bands simply refused to go away, and while the stage was amazingly clean and uncluttered, quote, you can't say the same for the music. The piece ends with too many of the same old pretensions while questioning if bringing the band into the 80s was such a great idea. Brett Milano from the Boston Globe released a December 12th review with a definite maybe title. He said Yes wasn't sure if they wanted to take risks or play it safe. Milano stated the old sound with standard metal pop sometimes worked, and sometimes it felt like a compromise. He said the substance only came when Yes played Heart of the Sunrise, as a reminder of how fresh they used to sound. This made the new cuts sound light and pleasant. Comments were made on how most of the cheers went to the old numbers, but the critic did praise Shoot High, Aim Low as surprisingly moving. In the end, the critic said it was fun after all, and this may be Yes's tightest lineup. He suggested they take chances or else they will be stuck recalling past glories. 1988, the year of the dragon. While Yes enjoyed their downtime away from the road, it was a momentary lapse of reason and much needed rest coming back to the endless cycle of mayhem of album promotion, interviews, and hotels. If Jon Anderson had doubts about the band's future, he added wood into that fire by pulling an ace up his sleeve, or in this case, a whole band up his sleeve. Question remains if Yes knew about this. I think Chris Squire knew, and I'll tell you why later on. Recording sessions for Jon Anderson's 5th studio album, In the City of Angels, took place at Ocean Way Recording Studio, Hollywood. Although the list of personnel for the album is huge, studio musicians included Steve Lukather, Steve, Jeff, and Mike Porcaro, David Page, and backing vocals by Joseph Williams. You know, Toto 1988, the band was putting the finishing touches on their 7th studio album, The 7th One. And guess who sang backing vocals on Stop Loving You? Jon Anderson. It was all about exchanging 80s favors with 80s styled music. Now, according to his solo album booklet, the reasons for doing this were, quote, "It was as though I've been pigeonholed just to be happy to be the singer in Yes." Jon adds, "Okay, so you don't want to hear what I have to say? What am I doing in the band?" Anderson wasn't having fun in Yes and said he wasn't being true to himself. In the City of Angels was produced by Stuart Levine, whose long list of credits included Simply Red's 1985 debut. Anderson was on a music quest for something different, but just like 1983 where he arrived onto Trevor Rabin's cinema, this was mostly a Toto record in disguise. You don't believe me? Well, Toto's own David Page co-wrote 2 songs on the album, For You and Top of the World. Motown legend Lamont Dozier co-wrote the album's hit song, Hold On to Love. Quite the double reference to 80s Yes, 90125's Hold On, and the word love from 3 songs of Big Generator. The track was Dozier's second collaboration with a prog name after Two Hearts, a track with Phil Collins for Buster's soundtrack. So how did Dozier end up on the project? Well, Stuart Levine produced his 1977 album, Peddling Music on the Side. It's all who you know. Also on the Anderson solo release was the song Is It Me, written by producer Red Lawrence, who also did Visions of Love for Mariah Carey's superb 1990 debut. While Toto's members did not play on every song on Anderson's record, they sure took precious time off their schedule to lay down the rhythm tracks around Christmas 1987 through January 1988. So how do I know the dates? While I didn't find exact information on the session dates, Toto's 7th One tour began on February 25th, 1988, and Yes's big tour ended on December 20th, 1987. So I based my calculations on this time frame. The project was done entirely in California, recorded and mixed at both Ocean Way Recording and Soundcastle Studios in Los Angeles. It was mastered by the great Bernie Grundman in Hollywood. Illustrator Jerry McDonald was hired for the album cover. If it looks familiar, it's because he also did Weather Report's 1985 album, Sporting Life. Despite the pop-oriented nature of these tracks, Anderson's vocal performances are powerful, picking up where 1982's Animation left off, with some elements reminiscent of Three Ships. Whatever tensions took place in Yes, Jon had his plan B in motion, and fans had no idea. A promotional video for Hold On to Love was shot in Hollywood. Director James Yukich was called in for the project, thanks to his vast videography at the time, including pretty much every Genesis and Phil Collins single up to 1988. He was also credited for Emerson Lake and Powell's Touch and Go, and the making of GTR, the home video. Hold On to Love features various shots of Jon Anderson singing in a soundstage while the crew assembles the set. Props to Jon for this no-look climbing of the stairs without falling. We get more shots of Anderson spliced in with B-roll footage of dancers that you feel was taken from another video. Then we cut to a shot of the band in a lounge bar mood with a cameo appearance by Yes's own Chris Squire playing upright bass, while Anderson plays a Fender Rhodes keyboard. That's Chris Squire rocking sunglasses inside a soundstage. Then we move to more Andersonian dance sequences that lead up to a big band set where Jon entertains the crowd next to a cast of synchronized movements for total dance retain.
Really cleans and softens.
Yes.
Does it control static clean?
Yes.
Pour it right on stains?
Yes.
Works in all temperatures?
Yes.
What is it?
Yes.
Really do all that? The answer is
Yes.
Yes resumed their big tour in January 1988 with 5 shows in Florida. Things got serious at their January 23rd concert in Pensacola as Trevor Rabin battled flu-like symptoms combined with an 103-degree temperature at the USF Dome in Tampa. Both shows at this venue were reprogrammed from November. Rabin collapsed from heat exhaustion between the encores. You'd think they canceled the next show, but no. He played a Sunday night date at the Hollywood Sportatorium before the band's doctor instructed full rest. This forced promoters and logistics into another batch of 5 canceled shows for a total of 66,643 seats, some $1.1 million in ticket sales. The venues that were left out of the Big Generator tour were Jacksonville's Veteran Memorial Coliseum, which was reprogrammed from November 1987, Ohio Center in Columbus, Ohio, where Kiss and Ted Nugent played some 16 days before, the Thompson Bowling Arena in Knoxville, where Def Leppard and Tesla played 8 days later, Market Square Arena in Indianapolis, where Dio and Megadeth played 16 days later, and Wings' Stadium Kalamazoo, where Dio and Megadeth once again performed 9 days later. Yes, the second US leg had better reviews in the press. This came as no surprise as the band grew confident with their new material, and was just a natural result of repetition. They looked happier. Their chemistry came back to a diplomatic state. We don't know the exact reasons, but they made the effort to work out their initial 1987 mood. Now the overall coverage was starting to cool down a bit. It was obvious by now Big Generator didn't have the same sales figures as 90125, so all they could do was ride the wave to the best of their abilities. Unlike the previous tour, Tony Kaye did not use a second keyboard player, but relied on MIDI technology for triggers and textures. The only problem with MIDI was it was still unreliable on tour. There were a couple of reported instances where it went down on some tracks. Now, drummer Alan White was the tour's most valuable player. The consistency in his playing on all dates is outstanding. He never seemed to have a bad night. The 1988 setlist remained intact for all US dates. Opening 80s blast with Rhythm of Love was followed by 90125's Hold On, then arriving at Tour de Force's fan favorite Heart of the Sunrise. Then it was on to a heavy metal double feature of Changes and Big Generator, catering to headbanging fans. Shoot High Aim Low cooled things down before Anderson's solo spot on Holy Land. Such harmonic convergence led Tony Kaye into his keyboard solo, later joined by Trevor Rabin's signature Solace Beard acoustic showcase. 90125 was back with Make It Easy, going into their 1983 hit Owner of a Lonely Heart. Classic Yes was next with Yours Is No Disgrace, and a brief cut Ritual from Tales from Topographic Oceans. Chris Squire's solo spot followed with melodic explorations into his own version of Amazing Grace. 1971 Starship Trooper had the crowd going wild with a big finale and instrumental frenzy. The band came back for 3 encores, one last song from Big Generator in The Ways of Love Will Find a Way, and the reason why the guitar sound here is not like the studio version is down to the fact that Trevor Rabin used a special tuning to replicate the style of a 12-string guitar while recording. Although he's seen with a 12-string Westone on the cover of 1987's Guitar World, it doesn't seem he used it that much on tour. Next it was a turn for I've Seen All Good People, which remained a fan favorite, and it elevated the venue's spirits. Closing number Roundabout made the Yes effect absolute. The 1988 tour continued with electrifying shows through the West. They made their 5th visit to Oakland's Alameda County Coliseum for a single date, where Pink Floyd did 4 nights back in December. Their journey included Yes's penultimate ever visit to the LA Forum, almost a month and a half after Rush, Aerosmith, and Dokken. Their reprogrammed shows in Albuquerque and Denver took place on March 11th and 13th, before heading out for a Yes record book entry, their first ever show in Honolulu, Hawaii, at the Neil Blaisdell Arena. Tina Turner played there in January. A March 24th article with Trevor Rabin discussed their upcoming show in Hawaii. Rabin, age 33, shared how his 2.5-year son, Ryan, was present at almost every Yes show and would, quote, tell his dad if the concert was good or bad. This second portion of their US tour saw them play for an estimated 450,449 seats, for an approximate $7.2 million in gross ticket sales. Yes moved on to their second ever tour of Japan. Crazy to think they hadn't played Japan since 1973 while promoting Close to the Edge. Despite no changes made to their setlist, Japanese audiences enjoyed their 7-concert schedule in their country. The band visited 3 venues. Yoyogi Daiichi Taikwan in Tokyo saw Pink Floyd sell out 3 nights back in March. A record Yes match with ease. Their Japanese return was a big thing. Fun fact, Hard played at many of these venues just days before Yes. The band followed with single shows at Yokohama and Nagoya, before a 2-date ending at Osaka's Furitsu Taiko Kaikan. They were the only concerts at this Osaka venue for 1988. Yes played for a total of 63,000 Japanese audience members, for an estimated total gross ticket sales of $1.8 million. April 14, 1988. Yes's world tour was over. In music news, Iron Maiden has just released their 7th Son album, where Al Yankovic went with Even Worse and his Bad parody by the name of Fat. Yngwie Malmsteen recovered from an almost deadly car accident and struck gold with Odyssey. Eric Clapton's Crossroads box set became a bestseller, and the Scorpions' brand new album Savage Amusement had a song by the name of Rhythm of Love with no relation to Yes. Trevor Rabin received co-writing credit for the song King of the Hill off Quiet Riot's 6th studio album QR. Rabin also provided acoustic guitar work on Lisa Hartman's 1988 track by the name of I Don't Need Love. Now, electric guitar here was played by the legendary Michael Landau, who can also be heard on Jon Anderson's In the City of Angels. Anderson himself provided vocals for Hiroshima's Go album. He can be heard on the title track. Jon was also featured in songwriting credits for Puerto Rican pop singer Chayanne's 1988 release. The song was Para Tenerte Otra Vez, which was a Spanish version of I'll Find My Way Home from Jon Vangelis' The Friends of Mr. Cairo record. Anderson received additional writing credits on former Vangelis sidekick Demis Roussos' 1988 Demis album. Jon's creations can be heard on Lament, Song for the Free, and Race to the End, the last one credited to Vangelis as well. Last but not least, Jon shared lead vocal duties next to Steve Harley and Mike Batt for the majestic track Whatever You Believe. The song was recorded at a charity event held on May 3, 1988 at Battersea Park, London. Atlantic Records' 40th anniversary concert was scheduled for May 14th at Madison Square Garden. It would be a celebration of the label's history and unquestionable force in the industry. A list of artists was made. The who's who on Atlantic's record discography included many highly anticipated performances, such as Led Zeppelin's second reunion, which you can check my documentary here on the channel. You may also want to check part 2 for Page and Plant's hard rocking solo tours at the time. So Yes was included in the bill, but it may have been a sort of reunion show for them. Well, tensions within the group were bad. They deteriorated even before the big tour started back in '87. By May 1988, there was the need for an intervention to save the enterprise from too much drama. This was supported by Trevor Rabin's 1989 interview, where he admitted to sharing with his bandmates his desire to stop touring and focus on solo material as a necessary outlet for his creativity. With 3 solo albums already in his discography, it's understandable, especially after the traumatic experience of Big Generator. Past a high-octane performance by the short-lived trio of Emerson Palmer and Robert Barry on bass, Yes took the stage. Their last show of the 80s was broadcasted live on FM radio and HBO. The musicianship was top-notch, but the vibes are off. You can feel there's something going on, and I'm not talking about stage monitors. It was full circle for 80s Yes, with Jimmy Page, Alan Watt, and Chris Squire from the 1981 XYZ demos sharing the same stage and event. It was a Yes concert journey of 1,559 days, 4 years and 3 months, after the band's 8th lineup took the stage in February 1984. This was the lineup's 3rd time at Madison Square Garden. The 5-song setlist included 3 songs from 90125, 1 from the Yes album, and 1 from Fragile. The glaring omission of Big Generator speaks of a closing chapter for the group. By the time they arrived at Roundabout, it was the 208th time they performed this song on the Trevor Rabin era. Yes's show was one of the finest performances that evening. Yes fans were excited about the Atlantic Records show, but just 2 days after this performance, Jon Anderson's In the City of Angels was released by Sony Music on May 16, 1988. Also that day was Zappa's first of several live albums by the name of You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore, Volume 1. Anderson's single Hold On hit the radio airwaves the next day along with its promotional video. The single entered the charts on July 2nd at number 98, just one spot above Milli Vanilli's Girl You Know It's True. Jon did not tour the album, but decided to leave Yes for the second time in his career. He was quoted back then saying he was not having fun and I will never hang out just for the bread, and I will never hang out for old time's sake. I do it purely for the music. If you're not true to yourself and true to your being, there's no point. We don't know if Jon Anderson actually felt trapped inside an endless cycle of commercial expectations, similar to his time with the Warriors, a band he quit in 1967, fed up with playing cover songs night after night. It was no secret Jon liked to have artistic control and leadership in Yes from the beginning. And 80s Yes was musically dominated by Trevor Rabin, who wasn't that excited about revisiting more old Yes numbers as years went by. According to Chris Welch's book, Rabin was quoted saying, "I actually thought in a lot of ways, Big Generator was the best album I did with the band, in part. There were some parts that I thought shouldn't have been there, like Holy Lamb, which I thought was pretty weak. What's harmonic convergence?" asks Jon. Now Rabin himself was quoted on a November 1987 article as to owing a solo album to Electric Records that was supposed to be released a year before.
Didn't get around to doing it because we were touring so much, and then there was another Yes album, and then touring again after the next Yes album. So roughly 6-7 years went by without doing a solo album. So eventually we were still touring, and I said, we got to stop. We got to just hang on for a while. I have to do this album. I really want to. It's in my blood. It's in my bones. I've got to do this album.
There were clear signs of both Anderson and Rabin going separate ways. So Trevor was very busy working on his fourth solo album and didn't find out Jon quit Yes until many months later. On the legal side of things, Jon Anderson wished he'd remembered the fine print. A May 1984 agreement was signed by all Yes members, stating the name and logo rights given to the band's current 90125 lineup. Anderson himself supported the idea of no withdrawing members to make use of Yes's name nor refer themselves as former Yes members. Drummer Bill Bruford got a surprising phone call. It was Jon Anderson asking if he'd be interested to make some music at various studios. Bruford thought it was an Anderson solo record and agreed. Arrangements were made and Bill arrived at London's Heathrow Airport only to find Rick Wakeman, Steve Howe, and former Yes manager Brian Lane. Let me quote a Trevor Horn produced hit. "When two tribes go to war, a point is all that you can score." And this is where our fellow Yes men stood. 1989 was around the corner, and with it, new music on the shelves, escalating record label feuds, and a California district lawsuit over an evening of Yes music and more. The stage was set for a progressive rock battlefield.